Why does someone who claims to love you insist on mentioning other people in your most intimate conversations? Why does that special person always find a way to compare you to ex-partners, friends, or strangers? If you've ever felt like a supporting character in your own relationship, you might be a victim of one of the cruelest tactics in the narcissist's arsenal: sadistic triangulation. Jung taught us that the shadow projects itself to dominate. The sadistic narcissist has discovered that they don't just need to project their shadow onto you. They create a psychological triangle, where you, they, and a third person become vertices in a perverse geometry of control. In this configuration, you lose your center. You lose yourself. But there's a truth the triangulator never wants you to discover. A truth that instantly dissolves the power of this manipulative tactic. The triangle only exists because you agree to be one of the points. And when you recognize this trap, when you see the threads that weave this web of control, something changes forever in your psyche. Triangulation isn't just about jealousy. It's about something much deeper and more sinister. It's about fragmenting your essence until you no longer know who you are when you're alone. It's about transforming your natural need for connection into a constant source of insecurity and dependence. But what Jung discovered about shadow projection gives us the key to unmasking this tactic. And today, you'll understand not only how it works, but why it works. And most importantly, how to break free forever from this geometry of domination. Have you ever felt jealous of someone you don't even know personally? Have you ever caught yourself comparing your every word to comments they made about other people? Have you ever questioned your own worth because someone always seemed to have interesting stories about third parties to share precisely when you two should have been connected? If these questions echo within you, it's because your psyche recognizes the trap. You've been placed in an emotional triangle where your position is never safe, never definitive, never enough. You constantly compete with ghosts, with memories, with people who might not even exist in the way they're presented. How many times have you diminished yourself to seem more interesting than the person they mentioned? How many times have you worn the mask of understanding when inside you were seething with insecurity? How many times have you accepted being compared, measured, evaluated as if you were a product on a shelf next to other products? As long as you accept being a vertex of this triangulation, your essence fragments. As long as you allow your self-esteem to be measured against third parties whom they strategically position in the conversation, your true self becomes a prisoner of this perverse geometry. Your higher self whispers now, "You are not a point in a triangle. You are a complete circle." Your intuition screams, "This constant comparison is not accidental. It's calculated." Your inner wisdom hammers, "Real love doesn't need third parties for validation." Do you recognize this trap? It's because you've been a target of this sadistic triangulation. And today you'll understand exactly how it operates in your psyche, how it fragments your essence, and most importantly, how to fully re-establish your emotional sovereignty. Sadistic triangulation arises from a specific archetypal void, the narcissist's inability to establish genuine, bidirectional connections. Jung would call this a severe distortion of the relator archetype. The sadistic narcissist cannot connect deeply with one person because that would require vulnerability, reciprocity, true surrender. So they create a dynamic where they never have to fully commit. There's always a third person in the equation. There's always a possible comparison. There's always a way to maintain emotional distance while still reaping the benefits of having someone invest energy in them. The triangulator lives in what Jung would call a perpetual persona. They never reveal their true self because they are constantly reflecting fragments of other people, other connections, other possibilities. You never have access to their essence because they themselves don't have access to it. But the sadistic genius lies in this. They transformed their incapacity into a tool of control over you. They took their shadow, their inability for genuine connection, and projected it as a flaw of yours. As if you weren't interesting enough to hold their attention alone. As if you needed to compete to deserve the place that should naturally be yours. The perfect metaphor is that of the emotional vampire who needs multiple sources of energy because they cannot sustain a deep connection with a single source. They drain a little from each vertex of the triangle, but never truly commit to any. Now that you understand the psychological root of this dynamic, let's unmask exactly what the four sadistic objectives behind this tactic are. And the first one is the most obvious, but also the most devastating for your self-esteem. The first objective of triangulation is to systematically and calculatedly create jealousy and insecurity. It's not spontaneous or natural jealousy. It's manufactured insecurity, strategically produced to keep you in a constant state of alert and competition. They mention ex-partners in the most intimate moments. They talk about how other people make them laugh when you're trying to connect emotionally. They compare your qualities to those of third parties subtly, almost always disguised as an apparent compliment. You're intelligent, but my ex had a different way of approaching these issues. This technique activates what Jung would call a projected inferiority complex. Your psyche begins to internalize that you are always in competition, always being evaluated, always replaceable. The jealousy you feel isn't about a real threat. It's about the perception that your place is never secure. The insecurity created is multidimensional. You question your physical appearance when they mention how attractive other people are. You question your intelligence when they tell stories about fascinating conversations with third parties. You question your emotional worth when they seem more excited talking about other people than about you. The sadistic one knows exactly which trigger to pull. If you're insecure about your appearance, they will praise the beauty of other people. If you have hang-ups about your intelligence, they will mention how interesting the ideas of third parties are. They map your vulnerabilities and use triangulation to amplify them. The second, even more sinister objective is to maintain absolute control over your emotional energy and attention. When you're constantly preoccupied with where you stand in their emotional triangle, you don't have the energy to question their behavior. You lack the clarity to assess if this relationship truly serves you. Control through triangulation is a form of psychological kidnapping. Your mind becomes occupied processing the comparisons, analyzing the mentions of third parties, trying to decipher what these references mean about your worth in their life. Meanwhile, they operate freely, without questioning, without demands for real reciprocity. It's as if they've created a mental labyrinth where you spend all your time trying to find the exit, while they observe from above, controlling every corridor, every false hope, every moment of temporary relief. You lose the ability to question why you're in this labyrinth in the first place. Control also manifests in how you modify your behavior. You stop mentioning other people so as not to give them the same feeling they evoke in you. You become more complacent, more available, more willing to accept crumbs of exclusive attention as if they were feasts. Your emotional autonomy becomes compromised because you're constantly reacting to their triangulations, instead of acting from your center, your truth, your real needs. You live in reactive mode, and whoever lives in reactive mode is being controlled. The third objective is to systematically devalue you without appearing directly aggressive. Triangulation is a sophisticated form of psychological abuse because devaluation happens through comparison and implication, not through direct attack. When they constantly position other people as references in conversations, they are sending a clear subliminal message. You are not enough on your own. You need to be measured against others to have value. Your value is not intrinsic. It's relative and conditional. This indirect devaluation is especially pernicious because it's difficult to confront. If you question it, they can easily revert. I was just telling a story. You're being paranoid. I didn't even say anything out of line. But your psyche registers the pattern. Your self-esteem absorbs the cumulative impact. Jung understood that systematic devaluation creates what he called negative ego inflation. You begin to see yourself as smaller, less interesting, less valuable than you truly are. Your shadow, your rejected aspects, become predominant in your self-conception. The sadistic genius lies in making you participate in your own devaluation. You start comparing yourself to the people they mention. You internalize the competition. You accept the premise that you constantly need to prove your worth in relation to third parties. The fourth and most revealing objective is to gain what experts call narcissistic supply from multiple sources simultaneously. The sadistic narcissist doesn't triangulate just to control you. They triangulate because they need the emotional energy of several people to sustain their inflated persona. When they make you insecure by mentioning other people, they harvest your anxious energy, your need to prove your worth, your intensified emotional availability. At the same time, when they talk to these other people about you, they harvest the energy of curiosity, of their jealousy, of the feeling of being special for being confidants. It's an emotional vampirism operation on an industrial scale. Each vertex of the triangle feeds their hungry ego with a different type of energy. You provide the energy of insecurity and the need for validation. The other people provide the energy of admiration and curiosity about their complex life. This technique also feeds their sense of power and control. Seeing multiple people reacting emotionally to their calculated mentions confirms to them that they have significant influence over others' psyches. It's a constant confirmation of their ability to manipulate and dominate. Now that you know the 4 objectives of sadistic triangulation, how do you begin to free yourself from this geometry of control? The first illusion to break is that you need to compete for a place that should naturally be yours. Grab a journal and conduct a brutal investigation of your own psyche. Identify every moment when you felt in competition with third parties they mentioned. Recognize every time you modified your behavior to seem more interesting than someone you don't even properly know. The practice of breaking free begins with a powerful internal declaration. I am not a vertex in a triangle. I am a complete circle. Every time they mention third parties in a way that sparks comparison, you internally affirm your completeness. You refuse to enter the geometry of competition. Develop what Jung would call conscious differentiation. When they triangulate, instead of reacting emotionally, observe the tactic. See how they position the information. Notice the timing of the mentions. Recognize the pattern and internally name it. This is triangulation. This is control. This isn't about genuine connection. Practice detachment from immediate emotional reactions. When you feel jealousy or insecurity being stirred, take a deep breath and ask, is this emotion my truth, or is it a conditioned response to manipulation? Separate your authentic emotions from those manufactured by triangulation. Most importantly, start establishing your own criteria for value that don't depend on comparison with third parties. Reconnect with your intrinsic qualities, your unique talents, your individual essence that doesn't need to be measured against anyone. Refuse to participate in triangulated conversations. When they mention third parties in a way that sparks competition, change the subject or simply don't react emotionally. Withdraw your energy from this dynamic. Without your emotional participation, the triangle falls apart. You are now the unmasker of your own story. You see triangulation for what it truly is, a tactic of control, not an expression of love or genuine connection. You are no longer the unconscious victim who accepts being positioned in geometries of domination. You are the guardian of your own emotional sovereignty. Sadistic triangulation only works with your unconscious participation. Now that you know the 4 objectives behind this tactic, now that you see the threads that weave this web of control, you can no longer be entangled involuntarily. You are the living expression of your sovereign self. You don't compete. You don't compare yourself. You don't accept being a vertex in others' triangles. You are a complete circle, an integral essence, an individuality that doesn't need external validation to exist fully. Comment which of the 4 objectives most alerted you to patterns you hadn't noticed before, like if you felt the courage to break free from the geometry of triangulation. Subscribe to continue this journey of individuation and protection against sadistic manipulations. Breaking free from triangulation is just the beginning of your complete emotional sovereignty. Unmask yourself.